day, grade 12 learners, and welcome to today's English first additional lesson. My name is Elizabeth Meyer, and this lesson is brought to you by the Gauteng Department of Education in collaboration with Saibono Discovery Centre. It's so good to see you, and welcome back. Today we focus on the question, are you exam ready? So, if you want to send any messages, please use the WhatsApp number 064 748 8913. Well, let's start. Today we're going to unpack paper 1. But where to start? Now, the best place always to start is to start with the questions. Why? Well, obviously your papers will be made up of a number of questions. Which questions? That's the big question. And how do you answer all these questions? Well, this is why I'm here today. Let me show you. If I look at your text and if you look at your questions, we can compare it to an iceberg. So, on the left-hand side of your screen, you'll see an iceberg. Some part of the iceberg is above the water and is visible. But the biggest part is underneath the water and not visible. Now, the same can be said about the questions and where you're going to find the answers. The questions that are above the surface are the straightforward ones. The ones where you can find the answer directly in the text. It's the easy ones. About 40% of your question paper should be made up of these questions. Underneath the surface, you'll find questions where the answers aren't as clear. And you will have to infer. Infer means to read between the lines. And deep down, probably at the end of a section, you will find your open-ended questions. And this is where you really have to dig deep to get those answers. But don't worry, I'm here for you. I'll help you. I'll show you how it works. So let's start with the type of questions. I hope you have a pen and pencil ready that you can make notes. The questions will start from the beginning of your text and move throughout the text in sequence. That means question 1 will usually be related to paragraph 1 or your title of your comprehension, for instance. Most of the time, the examiner will refer you to a very specific paragraph or line. And make sure you always reread that paragraph or line what they refer to. Don't think you know what it means in that paragraph. Always go back. Now you have to keep in mind, when you answer the question, what is expected of me? Do I need to answer a sentence? Do they require a word or a phrase? So make absolutely sure you know exactly what is required from you. Please remember, don't start a sentence with a conjunction like because or and or but or so. You shouldn't start any sentence like that. The next thing you can look at, which is a really good indication of how much you have to write, is obviously your mark allocation. Always refer to how many marks each question counts. That will give you a very clear idea of how much you have to write. And I know the next one sounds obvious, but you'd be surprised. When we're stressing and when you're writing an exam, you might number incorrectly. So make sure you number exactly like the question paper. As I said, If a question requires 3 marks, then you have to write 3 points. Don't give us 2 or 4. It's 3 that we need, then we need 3 points. And very, very important, I'm going to repeat this quite often. Please don't give a word if you're asked for a sentence. So that's why I say, make absolutely sure you know exactly what is required of you. You might be asked to support a true or false question or a yes or no question. Now remember, you're not going to get marks for yes or no. It has to be there. When we're looking at the reason, that's where you're getting your marks. So always remember that. Now, consecutive means you have to answer or you have to quote, for instance, one word after the other. They will tell you exactly how many consecutive words are required. So you have to make sure you quote the right number. If you are quoting, in other words, if a question requires you to quote and it's said very specifically, quote, remember to include those inverted commas. And once again, I know it sounds obvious, please write every answer on a new line. It makes it easier to mark and it looks neat. So how do you answer questions? Well, this is the easiest way. But this means you have to have a pen or a pencil or even your highlighter with you when you attack these questions. Now, the very, very first thing you have to do is to find your question word. Now, your question word is that word will tell you exactly what is expected for you. Those are words like describe, explain, evaluate. So find that word, underline it, make sure you can identify it in your question. Next, find the key words or key ideas and encircle them. You've got the question words and you've got the key words, so what's next? Now you can go back to your passage and search for those key words you found in the question. It will make it so much easier for you to find the answer. Be careful. You can't copy from the passage unless it says very clearly you have to quote. Be very careful. Now, do you remember our iceberg? Do you remember I said to you some questions are straightforward ones? So let's look at them. Then it will be easy for you to identify them when they come up. Now, as I said, your question words tell you what to do. And that's why it's so important. The moment you underline your question word, you know what to do. So let's look at them. Describe is really a straightforward question. That means you have to tell us what it is like. If you have a question with the word identify as a question word, you have to go find the answer. Now remember, as I said, these are straightforward answers. You'll find the answer in the passage. Illustrate means to give an example. Compare means you have to give us either the differences or the similarities. Be careful. In this question, they might tell you specifically they want the differences, but if they don't say anything, give both, just to make sure. Look at your mark allocation. When you're required to list, you have to write in point form. Now, I hope you can remember what point form is. That means underneath each other, like a shopping list. You have to write your answers underneath each other. Not next to each other, underneath. So these are question words, as I said, where the answers are really straightforward. And you'll find them easily in the text that are given to you. When you're asked to quote, remember to include those inverted commas, but make sure you know how many words you have to quote. Now, and this is the most important thing for today. If you're not asked to quote, then you have to write it in your own words. The instruction in the beginning of paper 1 will tell you very clearly that you will have to write all the answers in your own words unless you are asked to quote. So be careful. Now, let's go to the questions that are not always as straightforward. Multiple choice. Now, I'm sure you would think a multiple choice is easy, but they can be bloody difficult at times. So how do you find the correct answer? Use the process of elimination. In other words, look at each answer and decide whether it is the right answer. If it's not, then scratch it out until you find the absolutely correct answer. Now remember, as we said, consecutive means one word that follows the other. It's not random words, it's literally words that follow each other. Always remember that. If you're asked to state two ideas, remember, you'll have to write it in your own words and you'll have to give two different points. So make sure that your answer is clearly two different points. As we said, differences and similarities with that compare question. Now, this is one that's often asked, and sometimes learners struggle with this one. If they ask you to explain, then think of the two most important questions. What and why? What do you have to explain? And why is it there? Right, so focus on those two words and you'll be able to answer an explain answer. Please remember to write in full sentences. Right at the bottom, in a deep blue sea, is the bottom part of your iceberg. And this is where the open-ended answers come to play. In this case, you're required to form an opinion based on the text and evaluate or give a judgment. What is important is remember always to refer back to your text. You have to ground your answer in the text. Now, what does that mean? It means you can't be general and really give us your own opinion. Your opinion must be related to the text you've read. If it's difficult for you to answer open-ended questions, here's an easy way to remember it. Use the peel method. You know how when you peel an onion, there are different layers? Now, an open-ended question have different answers, and you have to peel back the answer. So how are you going to do it? Well, P stands for point. So you will state your point. Yes, I agree that English is easy. That's my point. I will give then an example. That's E for example. During the broadcast lesson, we were taught how to answer questions. Then you have to explain the example. For instance, let's say we were told that in the broadcast lesson, there are different layers and we have to use the Peel method to answer open-ended questions. And the L, link your answer back to the question. And this is the reason why to answer questions in English is easy. Can you see how easy it is? You make a point, you give an example, you explain, and you link it back. Peel. That is your keyword for today. So for any open-ended question you might have, either in paper 1 or paper 2, use a Peel method. You can even use it in your other question papers as well. Now, another question word that's often used is evaluate. Now, remember, this is where you give your opinion based on the evidence of the text. They might even ask you to substantiate. If you have to substantiate, you have to prove something. In other words, usually a statement will be given to you and you have to prove that it's right or wrong. If you asked to discuss, it will mean you have to analyze it very carefully and give points in favor for or against. Always using evidence from the text. Remember, you have to go back to the text. Find your examples in the text and then explain them. Always use these questions. If you have an explain or do agree or use your own words, focus on those two key words, what and why. And I promise you, any question will be a breeze. Remember, the Peel method is the best way to use when answering your open-ended questions. P for point, E for example, and remember you get your example from the text, explain it and link it back. Tell us why the writer has decided to include this specific part of a text. Right. I've been telling you this the whole time that you have to use your own words. But I know it might be difficult. Let me give you some tips on how to use your own words. That means you have to put it in your own words, not quoting, but you're not allowed to change the meaning. So how do you do this? Well, you can always start your sentence from a different point of view. That's one way. Or you can use a synonym. Maybe you know a synonym for one of the words in the sentence and you can use that. You can change the sentence structure. For instance, you can change it from active voice to passive voice. That's changing the sentence. Or you can break some of the information into separate sentences. By doing that, the examiner will know that you know how to write in your own words. Now, here's some tips. As I said, you can either use a synonym or antonym. But if you do use these guys, make sure they fit in the place of the original word. Let me give you an example. We're given a sentence, the man was angry, and you want to write it in your own words. You have to find a word that will replace angry but has the same meaning. Now, I can say the furious man, or the man which is furious. As easy as that. So, by now you should know how to answer questions. Well, let's dive in straight into paper 1. comprehension and language. Now, you will get 2 hours to complete your paper and you'll have for 80 marks. Now, these are the instructions you have to look at. In this case, you have to answer all the questions. Now, leave a line open between each answer, and please remember to start each section on a new page. Now, what does your paper look like? There's going to be a section A, comprehension, for 30 marks, a section B, summary, of 10 marks, and then you have section C for 40 marks. Now, section C is divided into 3 parts. We have an advertisement, 10 marks. You have a cartoon for 10 marks. And you've got some language editing for 20 marks. Now, as you can see, I've included the time allocated for you to answer these questions. Now, can I give you a tip? Start with the easiest part. Start with your summary first. It's the easiest way to get marks. If you're scared to start with the comprehension, do it later. After you've done the summary, then go to your section C. You know we're going to give you an advertisement and a cartoon. And I'll show you the same kind of questions pop up every time. Now let's start with the comprehension. You will be given 2 texts. The first text is a prose, in other words, a written text, and you will be required to answer questions there for 24 marks. You will also be given a visual text of 6 marks. Now, remember, there is no relation between the prose and the visual text. And you don't have to try and find any connection between the two. They are 2 completely different texts. Now, how do you answer a comprehension? Here's some tips. When you get your question paper, you will be given 10 minutes reading time. Now, I suggest you use those 10 minutes to read your comprehension. While you're reading, form a picture in your mind of what you are reading and try to find the main idea of a text. After your 10 minutes is up and you can start, move immediately to your questions. Now, you can't just read through them. Remember, I showed you that you have to use your highlighter and your pen to unscramble those questions. Do you remember that? Now you have to do it again. After you've read the passage, go to your questions. Find your instruction word. Find those keywords. Now either highlight them or encircle them, but you have to know exactly what is required of you. So, just don't read them, work with them. Now, you've read the questions. You have a very good idea what is required. Now, read the text again. While you're reading now you can find those unfamiliar words, and you probably will find an unfamiliar word or 2. Find them. Look for transition words. Transition words are words that connect paragraphs. Words like firstly, secondly, thirdly, however, in comparison to. See if you can find the linking words between paragraphs. You can even make notes while you're reading. And remember, you've seen the questions, so you know what to look for. So while you're reading again, if you find the answer to a question, make a quick note there. Now, you need to read again. Yes, you've heard me. Once again, you have to read it. Read it slowly and carefully. And then you can start answering the questions. Why are we doing this? so you have a very, very good idea what's in the text before you start answering. Very important. When you're done checking or writing your answers, you have to go back and check them. You'll have more than enough time to complete this exercise. Now, in your first impression of your reading, remember those 10 minutes that you have? When you read, make sure you get a good idea what the text is all about. Create a picture in your mind of what you are reading. Look out for that title. The title will definitely give you some clues about the contents of the text. We might even throw in a question about the title. The introduction will set the mood and will give you an idea what's going to happen next. And obviously, the conclusion will sum it up. So be very wary when you read them. You have to ask yourself a number of questions while you're reading. Why do you think has this passage been written? In other words, what's the purpose of it? What is the writer's intention? How does he express himself? Does he use figures of speech or other rhetorical devices? Is he using formal language or more informal language? So you have to keep your eyes wide open. You might even look at who is the writer. You never know, it might be somebody famous that you know. Ask yourself, for whom was this text written? You know, with for advertisement, we always say there's a target audience. Now, for a text, there's a reading audience. Who's going to read this text? Main idea we focused on. And now you can start looking at where does it take place? Where does it appear? Is it in a magazine? Is it a blog? Was it a newspaper? Because each one of these will have different features. Even when does it take place? Did they refer to a specific time or a specific date or anything like that? Well, you have to check. Now, I know in the second reading, remember if you did the first reading, in your second reading of your text, you might find those unfamiliar words, words that you've never seen before in your life. How do you find out what is the meaning of a word if you're not allowed to have a dictionary or a cell phone with you? Well, there's always a way. Let me show you. When you read the second time, you found that unfamiliar word that you've never seen before. Write it down. Now, look at the word. Can you figure out what is the root? Does your word have a prefix or a suffix? Can you look at the word and see whether it actually, which part of speech is it? Is it an action word, which means it's a verb? Is it a word that's describing a noun? Then it's an adjective. Or is it a noun? Can I put this word into a plural? Can I taste it? Can I smell it? Well, if you figure that out, then you're halfway there already. Because obviously, if you can figure out it is a verb, then it must be some kind of action that's been done. If it's a noun, then you know it's something physical there. Now, you've looked at the word. You might still have some trouble figuring out the meaning. So let's get a bigger picture. What you need to do now is look at the sentence in which this word appeared. You might find 5 other clues there. Now, this is what you have to look for: punctuation. There might be commas or brackets that actually explains the word. Look out for those. You might find in your sentence there's actually a definition. Maybe not in the sentence where the word appears, but in the next sentence. So remember to read all around the word. They might even show you a contrast. There might be a comparison with something else. And lastly, they might even give you an example. Right, so use your contextual clues in your sentence and try and figure out what is the meaning of that word. Now, remember you will be given a visual text. And as I said, it has no connection to text A, which is the written text. Now, your visual text might be anything from an advertisement, it can be a cartoon, it can be a graph, or it might even be an infographic. So, what do you do when you see this? Well, you look at it very carefully. Remember, it's a visual text. Ask yourself the following questions. Are there people in the picture? If people are in the picture, what are they doing? Where are they? Can you see what I'm doing? You're literally analyzing the visual picture. If the people are there, look at their facial expressions, their body language. Are they using their hands? What are they doing? Look at where they are positioned. Look at objects in your visual text. Where did they place each object? And you really need to start thinking as to why has it been placed there. Every picture tells a story. And obviously the writer created some kind of mood. See if you can identify it. Now, step 2. Remember, we only looked at the visual part. Now, you have to look at the words. Read the words carefully and try to link them to the picture. In other words, what's the connection between the words and the picture? Look at the words in the heading and look at the words below the picture. And always look at where did they place the words. Sometimes they will place words at certain places to grab your attention or make big words bigger. Be careful for that. Look at your picture again and see how the two fit together. How do the words and the picture connect with each other? Because there must be some kind of connection. And then your third step, now you read the questions. But remember what we said. The same rule applies whether you're doing comprehension, whether you're doing advertisement or cartoon. Find your question word. Then find the keywords. Remember, you have to work with your questions. You have to analyze them. Now, by now you should have done question 1, the comprehension. Let's move over to the summary. And as I said before, A summary is the easiest part of your paper, and you can easily score 10 marks. Just follow the instructions. So let's look at them. Now, remember, when we summarize, we take large chunks of text and we reduce them to main points. Your summary is all about finding a main idea. Now, can you see how important this is? Because we actually did it when we did the comprehension as well. In a summary, they will give you very clear instructions. Here they are. Number 1, your summary must be written in point form. I hope you remember what point form means. Second, you have to list 7 points in no more than 70 words. And can I tell you, we do count the words. So it's no use trying to guess or trying to lie. We know exactly how many is 70 words. We count. Number your 7 sentences from 1 to 7. Write 1 point per sentence. This is really important because sometimes you might want to add a second point. The examiner will only mark the first point and ignore the second point. So stick to 1 point per sentence. Use your own words as far as possible. And remember how we did that? So how do you do a summary? Well, it's really easy. But before you do, you have to remember, when you are done with your summary, you have to indicate the total. You can write less than 70 words, but you can't write more than 70 words. Now, here's the steps. First, identify what you must summarize. The instruction will be very clear as to exactly what is it they want you to summarize. Now, make sure you write the topic in bold letters on the top of your planning, so that you can keep this in mind the whole time. And you have to know, this is what I'm looking for. Then, read your topic. Read every sentence of your paragraph and decide whether this is answering my question. Is this relevant to what I have to summarize? You will do a rough draft. Oh, and this is very important. Remember, after you've done your rough draft, to cancel it, draw a line through it. Make sure you've got a final and it's clearly indicated. Now, here are the steps. Delete. Read and delete anything that is not part of your topic. Now remember, you wrote your topic in the beginning of your page. So now you can see whether any sentence that you're reading is really part of what you have to do. And if it's not part of a summary, delete it. Keep the most important sections. Write it down as your rough planning. Now you make your list. Now remember what we say. When you're doing a shopping list, it's one word after the other, underneath each other. Now the same here. List your main points underneath each other, changing them to topic sentences. Now, a sentence means there must be a verb in it. Write the summary in your own words. So we delete, we keep, we list, and we write. And if you follow those 4 steps, well, then you're almost there. the last thing you have to do is obviously to count the words, write the final number of words down, and draw a line through your planning. Otherwise, the examiner has to mark the first thing he sees or she sees. So make sure there's a line for your planning. Let's move over to section C. Now, I have a little joke for you here. It says, smartphone on a stick. Who has the fairest profile pic? Now, I'm sure by now, if you just look at my two pictures, you can figure it out. That section C is the language section. And here, we obviously have an advertisement for 10 marks. And we have a cartoon for 10 marks. And we've got language for 20 marks. So let's start quickly with your advertisement. Now, with an advertisement, and you will be given an advertisement in black and white, the same questions are always asked. So when you prepare to study for your paper 1, grab a magazine, open it up, find any advertisement, and start asking yourself the following questions. Who's the advertiser? Now remember, you have to be quite specific. Second thing you always look at is, what is the product that's being advertised? Now remember, it's not always a product. It can be a service as well. So make sure you figure out that one. Who is going to buy this product? Now remember, when you answer this question, be specific. You can't say people. You can't say people who love eating hamburgers, for instance, or people who love smartphones. That you can do. But you can't just say people. Make sure you can include the age perhaps, or even if it's male or female, what group are we looking at? Are we looking at housewives? Are we looking at executives? Are we looking at teenagers who love phones? But be as specific as you can. Logo and the slogan. I hope you can remember that one. So let's look at our famous Nike advertisement. The logo is obviously the tick. And the slogan is a little catchy line that keeps stuck in your head. Just do it. Right. Look at the visuals that are used. Remember when we did the visual text? We spoke about visuals. And then look at the words. What kind of words have they chosen to include in your advertisement? How are they trying to persuade you? Remember, you have to be a very critical reader when you look at these things. It is so important to remember that nothing in an advertisement is accidental. Everything is there for a reason. They want you to buy the product, and they will do anything they can to get you to buy it. As a buyer, you have to be on the tip of your toes to recognize how are they persuading you to buy this product. We love asking you this question. What is the link between the words and the visuals? And this might sound familiar because when we discuss text B or the comprehension, we ask the same question. So look at the pictures, look at the words. What is the connection? Are there contact details? Are there social media logos included? Like Facebook or even Twitter, How can the reader get more information about the advertised product? We love asking you this question. And we usually ask you to state 2 points. Now remember, when you get to your question, we have to encircle your word, your question word. And what do we have to do? 2 points. Remember that. Now, usually there's a website that you can use, or there's a social media logo. Right. Now let's move over to your cartoons. When you analyze cartoons, and you can do exactly the same, look at the following questions. And these are basic questions, but they give you so much information. What is the setting? Where are they? Look at their facial expressions, the body language, the gestures. Look at light and dark, how light and dark is used. Look at the front of the picture. What can you see? What can you see in the background? Look at the words. How does the words link up to what's happening in the cartoon? And what information do you find if you think different speech bubbles are used? What are they trying to tell you? Can you see what we're doing? We are not just jumping into the questions. Take a time, look at the cartoon, analyze the cartoon, frame for frame, figure out where, what, why, figure out everything. Look at the humor, and then, only then, you start looking at the questions. Don't just jump to the questions and think you'll be able to answer them. Analyze your cartoon. Now, one of the things we love asking is visual and verbal clues. And these are 2 terms that you have to know. So let's quickly look for an example at the cartoon on your screen. The lady saying, "Do you mind if I strap your phone to my forehead so I can pretend you're looking at me when I talk?" Now, we will ask you, what are the visual clues? Let's just quickly see. I'm just having a technical problem here to get our slide moving. There we go. Now, visual clues is what you can see. Now, in this case, what do we see? Look at the lady here. She is obviously, her hands are folded. She is looking straight at the gentleman. Can you see there? She's looking at him, but he is looking down. Those are the visual clues that you are seeing. Can you see that he's not even looking at her, even though she is talking? Can you see that his whole body is turned to the other side? It's not turned to her. Right, so those are your visual clues. Now, let's look at your verbal clues. Verbal clues have to do with the words. So after we've looked at the visual clues, let's look at the words. Now, can you see here that she's quite sarcastic? She asks him if he can put the phone on her forehead so that at least if he's looking at the phone, she can pretend he's looking at her. Right? You see? That's really sarcastic. Huh? So, can you see there's a question mark? These are verbal features that you have to look at. Now, please remember these 2 terms. We've done quite a lot. So I'm going to give you a quick break, but we'll only have a short break for about, let's make it 5 minutes. And then we'll come back and we'll discuss the last part of your paper one, which is, of course, the language. Hello and welcome back. We're busy with paper one, unpacking paper one. And before the break, we were discussing section A, question comprehension, question one, question two, the summary, and we looked at the cartoon in the advertisement. And now we're looking at the last part of your paper one. Now remember, you can always chat on us with WhatsApp. The number is 064 748 8913. So the last part of your paper one is, of course, the language. And I really think this is the easiest part. So what do we usually ask? Well, there's a list. And I hope you have pen and paper ready that you can write down this list, just to double check that you have studied everything. Concord. Remember, that's your subject and your verb that's in agreement. In other words, if your subject is, for instance, singular, then your verb has to be singular. Active and passive voice. Question tags. Our favorite, that reported speech. Negative sentences, in other words, where you're required to write a sentence into the negative. Question forms, that's where we usually ask you to do a tag question, combining two sentences into one. These are all the things we usually ask you. We can also ask you about the apostrophe, when and how to use it. You might be asked to identify the parts of speech in a sentence. You can be asked to rewrite a sentence into another tense. For example, the present tense, the future tense, or the past tense. Another question is obviously vocabulary. We will be looking at the spelling of words, synonyms, antonyms, homonyms, homophones. You have to know exactly what they are. Singular and plural. Sometimes we can ask you to write a word in the plural, or we can ask you to write a word in the singular form. And then obviously, critical language awareness. There is quite a lot of things that you have to study for paper one. Please make sure that you tick the boxes and that you study everything as required. Now, just like with your comprehension, with question 5, you will be given a written text and you will be given a short text. Now, let's quickly look at that. In this case, the short text is obviously not as long as your comprehension. And it consists of a few paragraphs. I'm going to take a minute and quickly read it to you because I'm going to base some of the practical questions on this paragraph or paragraphs. Let's quickly run through it. Painted out of a corner. Nicholas Dyer, an award-winning wildlife photographer, lives his life exploring Eastern and Southern Africa. His home is usually his tent and Toyota Land Cruiser. It contains everything he needs. Dyer's passion for wildlife, conservation and photography began when growing up in Kenya. On leaving Kenya, he worked in London as a fund manager and subsequently ran a successful marketing business. He returned to Africa in 2012 to live his dream of full-time photography and satisfy his love for adventure. He has since spent over 365 days in the park photographing a wolf on foot. He developed a deep insight and a passionate concern for its survival. In 2014, he met Peter Blinston, head of Painted Dog Conservation. Their shared passion developed into a strong friendship. Together, they set up the Painted Wolf Foundation to raise awareness and support wild dog conservation across Africa. Our book, Painted Wolves, provides information on how to save the wild dog from extinction, said Dyer. And this was adapted from Skyways, January 2020. Right. Now, look at your questions. Question 5.1.1 is usually 3 or 4 sentences that contain deliberate errors, and you will be required to identify those errors. But how do you know what to look for? Oh, let me tell you a secret. Here we are. We are focusing on words that have a spelling mistake. You might find words that are easily confused, like there and there and there are. We include errors with regard to concord and tenses. We might even include sentences that have error with apostrophe or a preposition. Now it's easy if you know what to look for. There will not be 3 sentences with spelling mistakes. Each sentence will test something else. So be on the lookout for these things that are tested. Now, one of the things that are often tested is the apostrophe. And the apostrophe is quite difficult sometimes. So I thought it was a good idea to quickly run through the apostrophe. Now, you know the apostrophe is used for 2 reasons. We use it for contractions or omissions. For example, where do not becomes don't. And the apostrophe is then placed in the place of the letter that's missing. So if you look on your screen, you'll see we've replaced the O there and we replace it with a little apostrophe. That's easy. But we're also using the apostrophe to indicate that something belongs to someone or something. We can say it's Sam's book, or we can say the players' uniforms. I hope you're making a note here. We never ever use the apostrophe to indicate plural. Never. We use only the apostrophe for these 2 reasons. Now, what are the rules and how can you remember them? Now, let's run through the rules quickly. If the owner is singular, then we add an apostrophe S. So if you want to say the Carver family, we'll say the family's car. Remember, family is here seen as singular. If your owners are plural, then we're only going to add the apostrophe. The scooters are the boys. If I want to say the boys' scooters, can you see we've just added an apostrophe? Nothing else. If your noun ends in a double S, then we'll add apostrophe plus an S. She is the head boss's wife. Now, remember, it works back to this one. Remember, singular, we add apostrophe s. And a boss is singular. And that's why it's given apostrophe s. Right. Let's see. If the word in the plural is not ending in s, then we can give it an apostrophe s. Right. Let me show you. Children, we don't have an extra s, we add an apostrophe s. Are these things quite difficult, aren't they? Let's make it easy for you. I really hope you can remember this little slide. This is the easiest way to remember it. We start at the beginning. And the first thing you ask yourself is, does the possessor end with an S? So that's your question. Does the person who something belongs to, does it end with an S? So let's say yes. So if we say yes, then we're just going to add an apostrophe. And that's the end. If we go back to the start and we ask the question, does the possessor end with an S? And we say no, then we add an apostrophe S. How easy is that? Right? That is so easy to remember. You just have to ask, is the person ending with an S? If it is already an S, we add an apostrophe. If no, then we add an apostrophe S. As easy as that. Now, let's go on. Please remember that the following do not take apostrophes, and this is where we catch you out. Possessive pronouns like yours and ours and theirs don't take apostrophes. Abbreviations like BIPs, MPs, CEOs, no apostrophe. And even plural dates, no apostrophes. So I hope this makes sense and I hope you can remember it. Just want to show you something quickly. Now, in this case, it says it is windy and it says it's been snowing. Here, an apostrophe S is used with it. But what does it mean? When it is it with an apostrophe S, it means it is or it has. In other words, it means it is windy, it has been snowing. So when do we use ITS without an apostrophe? Let me show you. We will say her teeth, his teeth, and lastly, its teeth. Can you see here in this case, there is no apostrophe. In this case, when we're referring to the dog's teeth, it's like his and hers. Can you see the difference between the two? In the previous ones, here, it is when it means it is. It's here shows possession. That was just a quick tip for you to remember. Now, I hope you're ready. Remember we said paper question 5, paper 1 starts with the sentences in which you have to find the errors. Now, the instruction says very clearly, write down only the question number and the words you have corrected. So, here are 4 sentences. And each sentence, there is a mistake or an error. You need to identify it and write down the correct word and its correct form. Now remember, your answer must only be the word. I'm going to give you a few seconds to see if you can get it right. Remember what to look for. So, did you get it right? Let's see. I'll go step by step. So the first one was given to you was Nicholas Dreyer, award-winning wildlife photographer, lives his life exploring Eastern and Southern Africa. Let's see. And the answer is, of course, Anne. Can you see here? The word a had to be replaced with Anne. Now, what is the rule? An is always followed by a noun where the first letter is a vowel. Remember there, our first letter for award is a vowel, and for that reason we have to make it an award. Right. Let's try the second one. His home is usually his tent and Toyota Land Cruiser. Did you get it right? I'm sure you did. Yes, it's usually. Usually has only one S. Be careful. Don't forget about the double L. Right, let's try C. It contains everything he needs. Aha, must be needs. Subject, verb, agreement. Remember, he's singular, so there must be an S. Can you see how easy this is? Especially if you know what to look for. So, we had a spelling, we had a concord. Let's look at the next one. Did you find it? I'm sure you did. Let's see what's the answer. Yes, of course, it is the apostrophe. Dyers is the name of the person. So they talk about his passion, Dyer's passion. So Dyer is the surname of the person, and because he's singular, we have to add an apostrophe S. It's easy as that. Can you see how easy this is? I'm sure you didn't realize it's so easy, hey? So, another question we love asking is to combine two sentences. Now, usually the conjunction is given to you, but be careful. Don't repeat words. So if there are words that are repeated in both sentences, don't repeat them. Make sure you've got the correct tense and always look at that concord rule. So, do you want to try it? Here's your sentence. Let's see. Combine the following sentences into a single sentence. Dreyer worked in London as a fund manager. Dreyer ran a successful marketing business. In this case, we gave you the conjunction while. Now, remember, immediately as you can see, there are words that are repeated. Can you see Dyer and Dreyer? So, we'll take out this one, and when we do the answer, we're going to start with while. Why? Because it said very clearly in the instructions, begin with. And you have to follow the instructions to the letter. So, what we did is we took the first sentence. While Dreyer worked in London as a fund manager. Can you see I took the whole sentence as it is? In place of a full stop, we've replaced it with a comma. Now, instead of using his name again, we used he and we added the last part of a sentence. He ran a successful marketing business. Full stop. Always make sure you've included that. And there are your 2 marks. As easy as that. Can you see how easy it is? What is important, you have to remember that when we use while, we have to include a comma. And always remember you had to begin with while. Now, if you didn't know, while means at the same time as. And that's why we can just connect the two sentences. We didn't need to change anything. Now, here's another type of question we'd like to ask. Rewrite the sentence in the present continuous tense. The sentence is, he returned to Africa to live his dream of full-time photography. Look here. Look at the mark allocation. That already gives you a clue as to what you have to do. So, rewrite. Now, this is really important. Can you see when it's asked to rewrite, it means you have to rewrite the whole sentence. You have to follow instructions very, very carefully. So remember I said rewrite, there's our word that we have to do. And what are we supposed to do? We have to do it in the present continuous tense. And I hope, and I know you're an expert, and I'm sure you can remember how to do that. So here's our answer. Here's our verb, returned, and we changed it to he is, because he's singular, returning. Why? Because it is the present tense and it is the continuous. And continuous tense always use an ing. Can you see how easy that is? Can you see how I broke it down in pieces and then I was able to do it? That's exactly what you have to do. Break your question up in pieces. Let's try another one. Yes, because this is what you have to remember. In the continuous, present continuous tense, we are either going to use is, are, or am, plus our verb, plus ing. Right. 514. Now we ask you, give the plural form. So this is what we're looking at. We're looking at plural of the underlined word in the following sentence. He has spent over 365 days in the park photographing a wolf. So this is the word we have to put in the plural form. Okay. They only ask you to give the word. In this case, you don't have to rewrite the sentence. So, do you want to write down the answer quickly? No, I'm sure you've got it already. Let's look. Yes, in this case, your answer was wolves. But look at the spelling. Now, spelling is going to count here. The F has been replaced with a V-E-S. Now, what's the rule? The rule is if your word ends with F or FE, then we change it to V, and then we just add the S. Right. Easy. It's really easy. Break down your question step by step. Let's try the tag question. Now, in this case, the question says complete the following tag question. Okay, we have to complete it. Write down only the missing words. So in this case, we don't have to rewrite it. We can only write the missing words. Now, let's look at it. He developed a deep insight and a passionate concern for its survival. Now, developed is our verb, and that's the one we need to look at. Now, this one is obviously in the past tense. So this is positive. He developed. So our answer has to be in the negative. Let's check your answer. Didn't he or did he not? Now, be very careful to make sure you've placed the apostrophe in the right place. Didn't he or did he not? Remember, this was the past tense, past simple tense. We had to use did, and that's why we got with didn't, because it's in the negative form. Right. Be on the wake up. Sometimes they don't include the question mark. They might only say to you, change the following sentence into a tag question. Then you have to know, I have to add the question mark. Just be on the wake up for that one. Okay, let's try another one. Oh, yes, just a quick reminder. When you do parts of speech, you have to know them. You have to know exactly the different parts of speech. Common nouns, abstract nouns, all of those. You have to know the determinants, what they are. You have to know all the different pronouns. So always make sure you know the detail. And then we've got adjectives, you've got your verbs, and obviously your adverbs. Now, I'm not going to go into detail now. You have to make sure that you study and you know them. Let's go to your question. Here's a question. So, we're giving you a sentence. Study the following sentence. Here's a sentence. In 2014, he met Peter Blinston, head of Painter Dog Conservation. State the part of speech of each of the underlined words used in the sentence. Now, when you write your answer, remember, we are going to start with this one first and then this one. So make sure your answer is very clear as well. Met is a verb. It's an action word. It's as easy as that. And of, well, of is of course a preposition because it shows the relation between two nouns. Right. Reported speech. Oh, and I know reported speech can be so difficult at times. Let's run quickly through the steps that you have to take. Now, it's actually very, very easy if you just follow it step by step. Now, there are 5 steps. You have to change the punctuation, pronouns, your verb, change your verb into the past, and then adverbs of time and place. If you can do these 5 steps, step by step, I promise you, you'll be able to do reported speech. Now, I know we're going to go quite fast here, but you will be able, when you're watching the video or re-watching the video, you will be able to stop, pause, and go through it slowly. So here's your question. Rewrite the following sentence in the reported speech. Our book provides information on how to save the wild dog from extinction, says Dyer. Right. Now, let's do this. We always start with a person's name. It's just easier. Dyer said that, and now I have to change. Our book becomes their book. Provides is in the present tense. I have to move it to the past tense. It becomes provided. The rest I don't have to say or to change. What I do need to change are all these inverted commas and commas. Can you see that? And that's 1 mark for there, 1 mark for provided, and the last mark is for punctuation. We give that last mark to you if you've changed the inverted commas. They've deleted them. You've deleted that little comma there, and you've made sure to include a full stop. And then we'll give them 1 mark for punctuation. Go step by step. Then it's easy. Remember I said you'll get a visual text as well? So this is the kind of question you might be getting. Give a correct form of the word in brackets. So again, give correct form of the word in brackets. You need to work hard to be a success. Oh, this is really easy. Okay. Now, I'll explain what this little man is doing down here at the bottom. Now, your answer is obviously successful, which is really easy. Or is it? Be careful. When you combine success and full, the 1L has to disappear. Now, the best way for me to remember is that the moment I take the word full and I add another word to it, then I'm very, very full as this person is. And that's why the person can't handle another L at the end of the word. And that's why when the moment we combine it, the 1L falls away. Maybe this is one way to remember it. Now, in any case, so that's just something cute to remember about. Here's another thing we'd like to ask you. Degrees of comparison. Getting employment is difficult than you think. Your answer? More difficult. I think you remember the rule. We only add more if our word has more than 1 syllable. Difficult. In that case, because there's more than 1 syllable, we have to use more. Right? I'm giving you so many tips here. Now, with active and passive, we've got a number of steps as well. But it works a little bit different than reported speech. Let me quickly show you. Always find the verb first. Divide the sentence so that you can see the subject, the verb, and the object. Then you switch places. In other words, your sentence then starts with your object. Change your verb and add by at the end. Now, if you've done this, you'll be able to do active and passive voice. Very important. The verb stays in the same position. And we're not changing the verb. The tense never changes. With reported speech, we moved 1 step into the past. But with active and passive voice, it stays as is. The format looks a little bit different. Let me show you what I mean. So this is what I call the tense recipe. The easiest way is to learn this off by heart. So for the present tense, can you see we're using am, is, and are, has and have, and then we're moving over to the past, we were using was and were and had been, and then the future tense. Right. So let's quickly write the following sentence. Here's your sentence. Rewrite in the passive voice. People who work hard achieve great success. Now here's Shrek. Did you get it right? Let me show you quickly. Here's our sentence. People who work hard achieve great success. And the first thing I've done, I've broken it up. I've found my verb. There's my subject. There's my object. And I've literally switched places. Great success is achieved by people who work hard. Can you see how easy it is? Now, just a quick joke. I'll never date again. An apostrophe. He was so possessive. Right, just a few last things before we end. I have to remind you, your literature paper, oh, be careful, ladies and gents. You're writing that on Thursday, and you have to make sure that you only answer the set works that you have been taught. Now remember, you can tune in on the 31st of August, in other words, on Wednesday at 2 o'clock for a wonderful presentation on literature. Oh, don't miss out on this. This is very, very important. Right, paper 3, get those creative juices flowing. Do the best and study for paper 3. Make sure you know every format. You know by now there's an essay, you've got your longer transactional and your shorter ones. And a final word from my side. If you believe in yourself, anything is possible. I want to wish you the very best with luck of the exams. But it's not really luck. It's hard work. Thank you for watching this lesson. Please remember, study hard, work hard, and see you next time. Thank you and goodbye.